When building distributed systems using tools like reactive architecture, it can often be valuable to consider how things operate in the real world. The real world is a natural distributed system, and so understanding how a natural distributed system works to solve problems can help us understand how to do it when we build computer systems as well. So let's take messaging as an example. How do we handle messaging in the real world? Well, if you think about human culture, we started out with what I would call synchronous messaging. That means face to face conversations, essentially. And in a synchronous conversation like that, typically the way it operates is I make a statement or I ask you a question, and then you respond to that question. I will continue to wait for you to respond. I'm not going to go off and do something else. I'm waiting for your response. That's what we would call a synchronous conversation. Now, we eventually evolved beyond that. We started doing things like letters, for example. We would send letters to people. And that's a very much an asynchronous conversation. You write a letter, you send the letter, you don't sit there and do nothing until the letter comes back with a response, because obviously that's going to be a very long time. Over time, we evolved new ways to do similar kinds of things. So, for synchronous conversations, we introduced things like phone calls, video chats, things like that. And then for asynchronous conversations, we changed our mail into email, and we added things like text messaging. So now we have a lot of different options that we can use when we want to communicate. But the key is what happens when we use these things inappropriately. So, for example, you may have had this situation yourself where you send a text message to somebody, but then after you've sent that text message, you sit and you wait for a response to come back. You're sitting there looking at the phone. Maybe you sent a text message to your wife or something saying, "Hey, what do you want to do for dinner tonight?" And now you're sitting there looking at the phone. She's not responding. She's not responding. You're getting frustrated. You're going, why aren't you responding to my text message? The problem is you've used that tool inappropriately. Text messages are meant to be asynchronous. It's meant for you to send a message and then the response comes back sometime. You have no idea what she's doing on the other end. You don't know if she's got her phone in her hand. It might be in her purse. She might have left it somewhere. She might be busy having a conversation with somebody, and she doesn't want to interrupt it to answer your text message. There could be any number of things happening on the other end, and you have no idea. So, using an asynchronous communication mechanism like that in a synchronous manner is inappropriate. It goes the other way as well. Imagine you're having a face to face conversation with somebody, you ask them a question, and then they pause and start checking their email on their phone, or they respond to that text message from their husband or whatever. Now they've taken their focus away from you, and you were expecting an immediate response. Now suddenly that conversation's got a little awkward. You start looking at them going, you're kind of rude, actually. And this is what happens when we use the tools inappropriately when we're having conversations in the real world. The problem is these kinds of problems happen when we try to use tools inappropriately in the software world as well. If we try to send an asynchronous message, but we do it in a way where we expect a synchronous response, things break down. When we start to do things that really need to be asynchronous and we try to use synchronous messages to accomplish the task, things break down. If we try to use an asynchronous message when a synchronous message is really more appropriate, things break down. So that's really what we're trying to get at here is we need to understand when asynchronous is appropriate, when synchronous is appropriate, and make sure that we're using the right tool for the job, because if we use them incorrectly, then our system starts to